I'm pretty sure I began and ended my video on the Tier 6 Tech Tree Pan-European Destroyer Scone by talking about the value of patience, possibly the value of positioning as well in World of Warships Legends, but if I didn't, I'm going to talk about that here because today we're taking our first look at the Tier 7 Tech Tree Pan-European Destroyer, the Östergötland, or Ostergotland. Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure Östergötland is closer to the actual Swedish pronunciation of the name, and it's as close as I can ever hope to get. So that's how we will refer to this ship. Much like the rest of the Pan-European destroyers, the Östergötland shares some of the same features, including very fast torpedoes with relatively low alpha damage, and no smokescreen, as well as 2 charges of the repair party consumable, good anti-aircraft firepower, although I've never really seen it in action because since the time has passed from the drop of the newest update, the population of CVs in higher tier games has steadily dwindled, as it always does, not that I'm complaining. The Östergötland's torpedoes, though, while they don't have the punchiest alpha strike you've ever seen, they are, I think, the fastest torpedoes in the game with a base speed of 86 knots. You can, of course, upgrade that speed to 90 knots if you use the commander skills that increase torpedo speed by 4 knots. So that will make them the fastest torpedoes in the game, which theoretically means that by the time the enemy sees the torpedoes, they're going to have less time to dodge them before impact. Although that speed is offset by the extremely high detectability by sea that these torpedoes have, which is 1.8 kilometers. That's extremely high detectability for torpedoes. I think it's even higher than the IJN torpedoes, and I suppose that's a balancing factor for the fact that these torpedoes are so very fast, although I think it could probably be lowered to 1.7, but honestly, not that big of a deal. This ship is, much like the Scone, sort of a hybrid between a torpedo boat and a gunboat. It also, like the Scone and like the Friesland, the Tier 7 premium Pan-European destroyer, has only 4 guns set in 2 double turrets, one on the front of the ship and one on the rear of the ship. Much like the Scone, these turrets take a long time to rotate. Their turret traverse time for 180 degrees is 18 seconds, which is fairly slow by destroyer standards, but not an uncommon value. The French turret traverse is similar, and so is the Russians after you buff it. The guns, though, while they don't traverse very quickly, they do reload pretty quickly. Just over 2 seconds base reload, so you can see that the Östergötland can put up a fair fight against something like a Fletcher, which certainly has much higher DPM and is a better gunboat. Nevertheless, we're able to take him out, thanks in large part to our teammates' assistance, the battleship and the cruiser over there to the south of the Bravo Cap. I did say, though, that I was going to talk about the value of patience with respect to the Östergötland. Of course, or rather the value of positioning. Of course, since these destroyers do not have a smoke screen, the only way that they can disengage from any kind of unwanted engagement is by turning around and running away. But at the same time, the Östergötland and the Pan-European destroyers generally have top speeds that could be described as both unimpressive and pedestrian, and that is no exception on the Östergötland. It's only got a top speed of 36 or 37 knots, which is in part why I'm running Conrad Helfrich as the commander on this build. Conrad is, of course, the base commander for the Pan-European ships, much like George Dewey is for the Americans. The reason I'm running him is because he is one of the only commanders that, actually, he is the only commander that has any kind of skill that affects ship speed. So I can get the base speed of the Östergötland up to a more respectable 38 knots, and that's before the engine boost. Now, because you don't have a smoke screen, positioning the destroyer well is extremely important, and not pushing in too aggressively at the start of the game into a place where you can't disengage, equally important, which is why I didn't push into the Bravo cap immediately. In fact, the enemy team managed to acquire all 3 of the capture circles at the start of this game, but since that time they have lost 4 ships. This is a phenomenon that can sometimes happen in World of Warships Legends. Even though it is very important to play the objectives in a domination mode game, it's not always a great idea to rush your ships straight into a cap and hard commit to that cap at the very beginning of the game. I see teams do that a lot. The red team has done that in this case, and because they charged so aggressively at the caps into the waiting hands of my team, which has proven itself to be abnormally competent in comparison to the teams you're likely to get most of the time playing this game, well, the enemy was just too aggressive, and as a result, they have perished. And my careful positioning, my patience, my refusal to go into the Bravo cap until I had support near me and could engage that Fletcher, that's all helping me out. So I think the Pan-European destroyer line, people are probably going to find it somewhat tricky to play because of the low alpha strike, the rather pedestrian speed, the lack of ability to disengage with a smoke screen. I can imagine many instances, and I've been in many instances, where I couldn't disengage from something and was taken out. But the highlight on this ship, I think certainly these torpedoes. The speed of these torpedoes, despite what you just saw there against the Iowa, makes them a lot easier to land on enemy targets than many of the other torpedoes, and that is nice. And while they don't have a huge alpha strike, they do seem to cause flooding a lot. They reload fairly quickly in just under a minute and 30 seconds, the way I have this commander built. So they're readily available. They cause floods, and the guns, if you put Conrad Helfrich on the helm of one of these Pan-European destroyers and choose his skill that increases the fire chance, then you can get the fire chance on these 4 guns, which reload every 2.1 seconds, up to something like 9 or 10%, which is an outrageous fire chance, and certainly helps if you can hit a torpedo against a battleship, cause flooding, and then follow up with some salvos from your main guns and start a couple fires. Well, then you're golden. You're stacking dots. You're getting damage over time, and that is the bread and butter of these destroyers, in my opinion. If they don't have big, juicy alpha strikes, then they have to rely on doing damage over time. And again, these torpedoes, pretty easy to hit as long as you line them up right. And it's not like they don't do any damage. We just hit that Iowa with 3 of them, actually 4 of them, and did nearly 20k, I think. About 18, 17k approximately. Also caused a flooding. You can see we've hit 8 torpedoes and caused 8 floodings, which leads me to believe that these torpedoes do in fact have a better flooding chance than your typical torpedoes, and that does make up for the alpha strike in many ways. I've gotten perma-floods with these Pan-European destroyers many more times across the course of games that I've played than in other nations' destroyers. In any case, this game is winding down, and I suppose we didn't have a lot of time to analyze my strategies and my playing here, but as you can see, I've torpedoed that Iowa, and I'm taking up a safe position near this island to pump some HE shells into a superstructure. This is something you might want to watch out for if you take out one of these destroyers. You can use island cover like a cruiser can. You can even use it a little bit more efficiently than a cruiser to keep yourself concealed if you need to shoot at an enemy target for a prolonged period of time, and keep yourself safe. If the Iowa wants to start shooting at me, I simply go forward and hide behind the island. Very easy. But the Iowa is retreating. He's one of only 2 ships left, and, well, now there's only 1 ship left. If you take a look at my ship sunk count, the number of ribbons I have up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll notice the lovely number 4 in that bright red sunk ship ribbon. That means I'm one away from a Kraken, and it just so happens that there is only one enemy destroyer left alive, versus 3 ships, me and 2 battleships. Now, theoretically, we could still lose this game. There are just under 5 minutes left to go in this match, but we do have all 3 of the capture circles. We have one of our battleships near us, just around this island to the right of the screen, and the last remaining friendly battleship is nearly in our spawn somewhere near the Charlie Cap. As far as we know, the final remaining enemy destroyer was spotted on the complete opposite side of the map, and he is so far away from that last remaining battleship that I am fairly convinced that nothing can be done to screw up the win that we've achieved here on the blue team. So I am going to be very aggressive. I want this Kraken, and I want to find this enemy destroyer and take the Kraken. Unfortunately, the enemy destroyer is a Fletcher, and he's at full health, which I didn't necessarily know at the time. But I'm shooting my guns periodically to see if I get spotted to get some sort of idea of where the Fletcher is. Turns out he's actually right behind this island, and he is in pristine condition. So we immediately open fire on him and immediately start turning away, hoping that the friendly battleship near us is going to be able to get shots on the Fletcher, but that hope is dashed. That battleship is still behind a rock, so he doesn't have a clear shot on the Fletcher, and the Fletcher is taking me down very, very quickly, so I make a terrible error here. I decide to launch torpedoes rather than shoot my guns. I might have been able to get the Fletcher down lower if I just continued shooting, but instead I launched torpedoes, getting greedy, trying to get the Kraken. I go down with less than 3 minutes left to go in the game. Fletcher is still spotted, being shot at by my teammate, but he's retreating further and further from the objectives all the time, and we've just crossed the 900 points threshold. So perhaps a bit of a risky move, potentially in other contexts, a game-throwing move, something you need to watch out for. But in this particular context, with a pristine, full-health Nagato all the way on the middle section of the map, so far away from that Fletcher, with just over 2 minutes left to go in the game, yeah, we are in no danger of losing. There is no physical way for this Fletcher to win at this point, so even though we didn't get the Kraken, we did play a pretty good game, I think, in the Östergötland, and demonstrated the efficacy of both its torpedoes and its guns. It's certainly sort of a hybrid destroyer in the way that some other destroyers are. It's a very good torpedo boat, and at the same time, a pretty decent gunboat, albeit I think it's going to be a destroyer that some people struggle to play for reasons I've described. Nevertheless, very effective, as you can see here. 3,300 base XP on this game, and 113,000 damage done. Not a lot, but certainly a capable destroyer and a fun destroyer that I'm going to keep returning to. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.